Okay, folks, so it's Rashida Strober, the dark-skinned activist, reads The Blacker the Berry by Wallace Thurman. I'm picking up where I left off on page 3. Emma Lou Morgan, the principal, had called her name again more sharply than before, and his smile was less benevolent. The girl who sat to the left of her nudged her. There was nothing else left for her to do but to get out of that anchoring chair and march forward to receive her diploma. But why did the people in the audience have to stare so? Didn't they all know that Emma Lou Morgan was Boise High School's only nigger student? Didn't they all know? But what was the use? She had to get that diploma. So summoning her most insouciant manner, she advanced to the platform center, brought her every muscle of her lithe limbs into play, haughtily extended her shiny black arms to receive the proffered diploma, bowed a chilly thanks, then holding her arms stiffly at her side, insolently returned to her seat, and that foreboding white line insolently returned once more to the splotch, its pale purity, and to mock it with her dark, outlandish difference. Emma Lou had been born in a semi-white world, totally surrounded by an all-white one, and those few dark elements that had forced their way in had either been shooed away or else greeted with some derisive laughter. It was the custom always of those with whom she came into most frequent contact with to ridicule or revile any black person or object. A black cat was the harbinger of bad luck, black crepe was the insignia of mourning, and black people were either evil niggers with poisonous blue gums or else typical vaudeville darkies. It seemed as if the people in her world were never halfway in their recognition or reception of things black, for these things seemed always to call forth only the most extreme emotional reactions. They never provoked mere smiles or mere melancholy. Rather, they were the signal either for boisterous goof-owls or painful induced and tear-attended grief. Emma Lou had been becoming increasingly aware of this for a long time, but her immature mind had never completely grasped its full and to her tragic significance. That's a very important line in there, because that's what a lot of dark-skinned people go through, and I know that's what I went through coming up, going through my dark-skinned mental abuse. I knew that I was being mistreated, but being so young, I couldn't articulate it. So just bear that in mind. In black families, some of the torture that some of these children are going through when they can't articulate the suffering that they're going through. First, there had been the case of her father, Old Black Jim Morgan, they called him. And Emma Lou had often wondered, why is it that of all the people she heard discussed by her family should always be referred to as if his very blackness condemned him to receive no respect from his fellow men. She had also begun to wonder if it was because of his blackness that he had never been in evidence as far as she knew. Inquiries netted very unsatisfactory answers. Your father is no good. He left your mother, deserted her shortly after you were born. And these statements were always prefixed or followed by some epithet that dirty black no-gooder, or darn his one ornery black hide. There was in fact only one member of the family who did not speak of her father in this manner, and that was her Uncle Joe, who was also the only person in the family to whom she really felt akin, because he alone never seemed to regret, to bemoan, or to ridicule her blackness of skin. It was her grandmother who did all the regretting, her mother who did the bemoaning, her cousin Buddy and her playmates, both white and colored, who did the ridiculing. Emma Lou's maternal grandparents, Samuel and Maria Lightfoot, were both mulatto products of slave day promiscuity between male masters and female chattel. Neither had been slaves, their own parents having been granted their freedom because of their close connections with the white branch of the family tree. Pay careful attention to that. because that's just an example of the historical legacy of light-skinned privilege. These freedmen had migrated into Kansas with their children, and when these children had grown up, they in turn had joined the Westward Ho parade of that current era, and finally settled in Boise, Idaho. Samuel and Maria, like many others of their kind and antecedents, had only one compelling desire which motivated their every activity and dictated their every thought. They wished to put as much physical mental space between them and the former home of their parents as was possible. That was why they had left Kansas, for in Kansas there were too many reminders of that which their parents had escaped from and which they wished to flee. Kansas was too near the former slave belt, too accessible to the disgruntled Southerners who, deprived of their slaves, were inoculated with an easily communicable virus called nigger hatred. Then, too, in Kansas, all Negroes were considered as belonging to one class. It didn't matter if you and your parents had been freedmen before the Emancipation Proclamation, nor did it matter that you were almost 3/4 white. You were nevertheless classified with those hordes of hungry, ragged, ignorant black folk arriving from the South in such great numbers, packed like so many stampeding cattle in dirty, mal-littered boxcars.